Recording.
All right, please stand by.
That'll work.
That'll work. That's satisfying right there.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Matt, I want to say thank you for listening. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Crocker, and we do three things on this podcast. We talk a little booze, we talk a little beer, and we talk a whole lot of basketball. Joining me, as always, you know him, you love him, he's the tall guy himself, Mitch.
Hiya.
Hiya to start.
Hiya.
We have some new blood in the podcast today. We've got Grill Daddy B himself here with us, Brandon Hatfield. He's a great friend of the pod, and we call him Grill Daddy B because he can grill you a mean steak. Brandon, introduce yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I'm very honored to be on the podcast. Anytime, feel free to let me know. I'm all about the grilling. So
I do. I'll take you up on that. So today we're going to be talking the Clippers. This is our first episode of the team series. We'll just kind of randomly pick some teams. Not going to lie, a lot of our friends are fans of different teams. So when we have a friend in town and they want to talk on the podcast, we're going to talk about their team. So Brandon's here tonight. We're talking the Clippers, and he also picked the beer for us today. So Brandon, what are we drinking?
first off, go Clips. It's a little weird. Some very strange time to be a Clippers fan and really new heights that I never would have imagined. But nonetheless, to the beers, we have Ballast Point is a San Diego brewery. They have a couple of their main breweries in San Diego. And we'll be drinking the Grapefruit Sculpin IPA. They have a few different beers, and they're labeled after certain fish. So you have like certain sea wildlife. So you have like your Sculpin IPA. Their Watermelon Dorado is actually really good as well. They have a regular Sculpin IPA, and I'm totally blanking right now. But they have a few. But nonetheless, I think Grapefruit Sculpin is their most solid of their IPAs. They have a distillery or they have like a restaurant in San Diego as well as in Long Beach, which I've been in the one in Long Beach. That's a new location, and they have really solid beers. They're one of the mainstream like breweries. They're one of the best in Southern California for sure.
For those of you that don't know, Brandon is from the Southern California area, as am I. So
Chino Hills represent the Ball brothers. Let's go. Let's go.
He's also a big beer guy, so we're happy to have him here. We're expanding the podcast, adding more beer. I need a break from the whiskey every time we do this.
So. The Devil's Acre a few episodes ago.
The Devil's River.
Devil's River. Sorry.
It's on the bar cart behind me, staring at me, and I don't like the look it's giving me right now.
I love the look it's giving me. No, I like the Ballast Point. I've had it a couple times. I know that it's like really blowing up, like because it's a pretty new one, right?
Relatively. I don't know what year they opened, but certainly in the last 10 years for sure. San Diego's kind of become one of the big cities for craft beer. Yeah, it definitely is up there with like Portland and LA as well, and back on the East Coast, there's a few spots. I think there's one in like Connecticut and Vermont that are big spots. But San Diego is per capita is one of the top for craft beers.
Yeah, that's what I heard is that the microbrewery scene is like huge in San Diego.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, and a lot of the really top breweries are just kind of not really franchises or like multiple locations like Ballast Point. They're kind of one of the bigger, kind of more mainstream for Southern California like craft beers, but. Always really solid. Like out here in Texas, like if I see a whole beer list and I don't recognize anything, but they got Sculpin, that's the go-to.
It's good. So. It's a little sour, which I kind of like. It's got like this little like sourness to it, which is obviously the grapefruit. I've had it many times before. I love this beer. It's great. I'm not a big IPA guy, but I do indulge, and this is one of my favorite IPAs.
Yeah, certain IPAs, I feel like, everyone kind of has their style with it, but some people like my dad really likes the like super hoppy, like maybe a little less flavor, but I like a good mix of like some hops and then some flavor as well, where you kind of going down. It's like I get these hops, but then kind of aftertaste you're like okay, I get a little bit of flavor in it. This one's really really solid.
Yeah,
a great choice.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but So we're drinking the grapefruit Sculpin IPA. Is there like another, like a normal Sculpin IPA flavor?
Well,
that's
if
like
you're
non-grapefruit?
paying attention,
Oh,
Mitch,
sorry.
you mentioned
There
that.
there is a regular Sculpin IPA. I don't know if I've ever had it. I've always just known the grapefruit's better, and
Okay.
I no reason to kind of dip down. You know, the beer should always get better. You know, it's like so.
You sound like every teacher I've ever had.
Your teachers talk to you about beer too?
Yes. In between them being
Man, I
like,
need-
did you not just hear what I said?
I need your teachers.
All right, well, let's get into it. We are here, obviously, to talk Clippers. Brandon's a big Clipper fan. We're going to start off with just letting you talk about your Clippers fandom a little bit. Tell us why you're a Clipper fan. Tell us some Clipper stories if you have any. But this episode is all Clippers. We're going to be talking about how the Clips clip.
That's easy to do. That's very easy to do. So I guess my Clipper fandom is growing up in LA. Of course, there were two teams, and one was great and one was awful.
I know the Lakers are terrible.
Yeah, the Lakers.
They're the worst.
It was really rough, for the Lakers in the 2000s, right? But growing up, just being truly honest, like I wasn't really a big Kobe guy. Which I was never super into basketball. Like I'm a little more of a football guy, but looking back on the Kobe stuff, it was kind of like just his intensity on the court kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I guess, which, that's not always a bad thing. But nonetheless, like, 8-year-old me is like, oh, I don't like Kobe. And like, he looks like, he's being a jerk out there or whatever. Nonetheless, the Clippers were so bad then, they pretty much paid you to go to games. So, like, we definitely sat, like, almost courtside for an insanely amount, like, for a very cheap price. And they had always, like, good deals and stuff. And it was just kind of like, oh, there's another team in LA to like? Like, sure, we'll give it a try. And it was a very rough beginning. It was nice to join because it was like the Sam Cassell, Cuttino Mobley, Corey Maggette, Elton Brand. So they weren't, like, completely awful. They were just, like, kind of bad to meh. They made a playoffs. I don't remember what year, but it was kind of that late, like maybe 2007, 2008. They made the playoffs. And it was just kind of like, all right, I could be about this, and then it was like really bad to then getting Blake Griffin, and it was just kind of the rise since then, which was really weird. Like, because when when we got Chris Paul, it was like, wait, we got like a real player, like. How does this happen? Like, we're the Clippers. Like, how do we get like an actual basketball player outside of the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry. No,
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, the Clippers have definitely had this weird meteoric rise, especially here with the Kawhi and Paul George thing, where I feel like they were the darlings of the NBA. Everyone's like, oh, the Clippers, like. I hope you do well. Even, 2 years ago with Doc Rivers, and he's like leading the squad with Danilo and stuff. Everyone's like, yeah, like, hell yeah, go Clippers.
That one year when they pushed the Warriors to 6 games, and they really shouldn't have pushed the Warriors to 6 games.
I was all about it. I'll get there. I would like the Lob City Clippers were they were very entertaining, and they had their ups and their downs, and it was just really strange because it's definitely a roller coaster of ups and downs with being the Clipper fan, and with the Lob City thing, which was weird because when we would get so close. Like, I think it was in 15, we choked to Houston 3-1, and which I actually went to 2 of those games. And the first game, like, Austin Rivers had like 30 points off the bench, and was just like, I was like laughing because I was like, where did this come from?
And Austin Rivers was on the Clippers at this point.
Yes, Austin Rivers was
on
a
both
Clipper.
teams.
Yes,
He was a Clipper
thank
then.
you for specifying. Yes, off the Clipper bench, and then we turn around back to Game 6 at Staples Center, and in the I think it was the third quarter, we were up by like 20 or 25. And Josh Smith and Corey Brewer just became Michael Jordan, and they just did not miss. Like, I don't know the stat line or anything, but anyways, they mounted this crazy comeback. Not even James Harden. He just sat on the bench the whole time, and it's like they came back without James Harden. It was very frustrating. But anyways, we ended up choking that series as well. And
that seems to be somewhat of a theme with you guys lately.
Yeah. The Clippers kind of started the whole 3-1 thing because it was like the blew a 3-1 lead, and then it was like the Indians in the World Series, and then like the Warriors, and it was like we keep passing the torch of this 3-1 thing, and ironically it comes back to the Clippers again this past
circle.
year. So that's the most Clipper thing I've ever heard. But it's the ups and downs, and then the Clippers, I think that was 18-19, was a really fun team, and. But going back to the Lob City thing, it was weird because at the time I thought it was like maybe it was Doc Rivers was the problem. Like, if we can't, like, if we have all these talent, these great players, why aren't they, if they can't mesh or whatever, like that's got to be the coaching. So there was a brief period where I was like, yeah, get rid of Doc. Like, this isn't working. Like, we have awesome players. This should work. And that really made a complete 180 because of the 18-19 team, which was like it was like the Pat Bev and Tobias Harris, and Zubac and Montrez, and young Shaman as well. That like what I really liked is that they played as a team. Like the Lob City Clippers, they were kind of a bunch of individuals just kind of going together, but that team really played together, and like you could tell that they really enjoyed themselves. Bobon's on that team as well.
Love me some Bobby. Love me some Bobby.
It was really neat. And that made a complete 180 because it was like, well, if Doc can make the playoffs and force these all great Warriors teams to 6 games, like, that wasn't his fault with the Lob City Clippers. So, really, really enjoyed Doc, and he's always been, if anything, now such a constant for the Clips. And then this past year with getting the crazy superstars, like I thought getting Chris Paul was a big deal. It was like when we got Kawhi, I think I got home from work or something. It was pretty late. It was like midnight, 1 a.m., something like that. And I look at Twitter. I'm like, oh my gosh, Kawhi Leonard signed with the Clippers. Let's go. And I'm thinking with this team. And then I refresh it like a minute later, and then it like Woj quote tweeted it. It's like, oh, the Clippers get Paul George in this trade. And I'm like, what? I had to like triple take my phone thinking this is actually real. And so they're at their point now, and it's, like I said a few minutes ago, highs and lows. It's the high of, having expectations and being title contenders, and but not getting out of the second round, which has just been
Jamal Murray had a little something to say about the title contending.
Yeah, something about the second round that really does us in. Yeah. So I'm not really sure, but I'd like to think we have what it takes, having 2 top 10 players in the NBA. So
people would argue against that after this playoff with Paul George being a top 10 player.
Yeah, I guess NBA. Regular season players we like, right?
I feel like everyone's kind of forgetting how good your team is. All right, like everyone's like kind of like pushing you off to the side and forgetting that like who Kawhi Leonard can be.
He is like the definition of consistency. Like, it is insane how you just like, and he's not really the most ball dominant player, but like, I feel like every other possession, it's just he dribbles to the elbow, pulls up a mid range, and he makes it every time. And it's just like, I thought Chris Paul's mid range was great. Like I think Kawhi, it's just. But then Kawhi, you see him posterize like it was a Daniel Tice on the Celtics. He completely yacked on one time, and he is an incredible player. And I'm really excited to see what he can do with maybe with some of the new additions that we'll get to later in the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the old before we get to the new. I want both you two to react to last season's Clippers because they came in with the expectation of it's them, it's the Lakers, it's Milwaukee, and it's basically those teams in the grand scheme of things. And so everyone was gearing up for this LA Western Conference Finals. It was almost written in stone before the season even started. Denver producer Jay's over there giving me the thumbs up. Had a little bit to say about that. Actually, a lot of it to say about
that one.
But let's react to last season. Is it blow it up time? What do we think?
Go ahead, Mitch.
So I had the Clippers going to the finals all year. Like, that was my pick going into the playoffs. Like, I still had the Clippers. I thought that if it did get to them and the Lakers, they had the best shot that anyone in the West Coast. I mean, I thought that Milwaukee would have had a pretty good chance against the Lakers too. But overall, I really like the Clippers. I still really like the Clippers, and they turned out to be fairly hateable, mainly because of Marcus Morris's like antics. But I still really like the Clippers. I think it's a dangerous proposition to be sleeping on these guys because Kawhi is the ultimate assassin in today's NBA. Or like, I would not want to play Kawhi in a 7-game series, almost as much as like fearing LeBron when you play him in a 7-game series, because Kawhi's kind of shown that he like can backpack a team where he did with the Raptors. Paul George, to me, is the biggest question mark. Like, he just needs to play like how Paul George can play and step up in the big moments. And that's kind of the biggest question mark for me, for you guys. it sucks to see you go down, like be up 3-1 and then lose in that fashion. Like that's just like heartbreaking. Producer Jay is probably gonna be mad at me, but I think that they got kind of lucky in that they caught you in like a lull. You definitely hit a lull, and Jamal Murray just like caught fire, and those two things combined is what caused that 3-1 collapse.
Yeah, and kind of going off that hateable thing, it's hard not to be hateable when you have Pat Beverly, Marcus Morris, and Montrezl Harrell on your team. That's just
we have a lot of players
so much just
that
jerk
could be on the
one
NBA
team.
all hate team.
Going
possibly.
forward, they won't have all those guys.
Yeah,
They'll
no
only
more
have
Montrez.
2 of them.
Yeah, no Montrez anymore for you guys. Brandon, how are you taking this loss?
I'm not happy. I didn't feel super great about us keeping him though. I knew he was going to get paid somewhere else, but when it came out that
but he didn't get paid.
When he didn't really get paid, and then he went to the Lakers, I'm going to start it off with a very, I'll say a very warm take. I won't even give it a hot. Feel free to expose me for this. It was a very Durant-esque move by Montrezl Harrell.
Ooh, Durant-esque.
In the classic, if you can't beat them, you join them. I know we didn't get a chance to play the Lakers in the conference final. We can thank the producer Jay's Denver Nuggets for that one.
I wish it was the Mavs.
And I was looking at you, but I was thinking of his team.
Ethan started daydreaming for a
I was
second.
like,
The Nuggets really
I
put
remember.
a wrench into that one. But if we have the chance, it's all, it's a woulda, shoulda, coulda. But anyways, Montrez, for the contract he did to go to the Lakers, felt very Durant-esque. Not nowhere near the level of that, but I got some vibes of that. And then,
straight backstabbing is what I got out of that.
Yeah.
I'm unhappy for you guys.
but then it goes about, and we would have liked to have Harrell back. Like, it's not like we don't want the sixth man of the year back. But I think we just figured he was going to get paid elsewhere. And then it was just like, well, okay. And I think we were ready to match maybe to a certain point because I think we have bird rights on him as well. But then it came out, and his first thing with the Lakers, basically asking him, like, did the Clippers, if the Clippers wanted him back? And he goes, and he literally says, quote, I mean, that goes without saying, apparently not if I'm on the other side. So it is what it is, really. Which is getting major vibes of like, And it's like, well, oh my gosh. I read this article in the middle of work today, and I was very upset. Here's another quote that Montrez had to say, quote, I feel that if you spend your career in any place long enough, you're going to want to still keep playing there and keep growing there. So, of course, I still have great respect for those guys and for that organization. But like I said, as far as they wanted me back, obviously it doesn't seem that way, does it? I was like, no, of course we wanted you back, but also we would have taken you back for that contract. So if you really want to stay here and keep growing here, how come you only take the 11.5 sharing the building with the other guys instead of coming back and running back with us?
Yeah,
So
no, it
feels pretty disrespectful, and he's claiming it's a business decision and it's about me and my family. But it's like, yeah, I guess I don't have to move, and I can go to the people that won the title that would have beaten us.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
I don't know if we would have beaten the Lakers.
The big question,
And we can get into that later as well.
The big question is like, how much did you guys actually offer him? Because if you could have matched that, or if you were willing to go more than that, then is he actually willing to come back to the Clippers, or was he just kind of like, I've mentally moved on, I need to get away from this like 3-1 thing and like go and play for LeBron?
I really don't know, and like I said, you guys keep up with it more than I do, but it seems like the Clippers never really had a chance. It was just kind of like, Harrell's going to the Lakers, I guess, for this. Like, there was never any word of like the Clippers are matching it. They want to bring him back. It was just kind of this weird, like, no one really talked about it. And I guess we assumed that he was going to get paid somewhere else. He goes to wherever, Detroit or Sacramento, somewhere get his paycheck. But for a contract that we would have very much offered him, it seems a little weird going back to the Lakers, especially when we dish out way more money to Marcus Morris, bringing him back, and Serge Ibaka.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the Clippers would have definitely taken Harrell on that contract. Like, it was just... It's a steal. I mean, you get the sixth man of the year, 2 years, $19 million. Like, that's a steal by any definition of the word.
Yeah, averaging 18.6 points per game last year to go along with Lou Will. So those were the big two off the bench, both over 18 points a game.
Dang, that's actually crazy. I didn't know that Montrez was over 18 points a game.
18.6, if I can get all my things together. It looks like I'm trying to find his boards here. Around probably 5.5. maybe.
Now, we did talk about Montrez.
No, sorry, 7.1 rebounds a game.
Wow, so he's putting up 18 and 7 off the bench.
18 and 7 off the bench to Lou Will's 18 and 6 assists off the bench.
Now, E and I did talk on another podcast earlier about Trez, and he is one of those guys that, like, the main thing that he's bringing to your team is energy. And obviously he has to have a good touch around the rim, and he has to have, like, a good feel for the game to be able to average 18 points. Like, that doesn't just happen. But I don't think that he is as valuable as your prototypical sixth man of the year guy is.
Wholeheartedly. And another thing, too, that Doc kind of did pre-Kawhi and Paul George, I guess when they also joined the team, was that the 18-19 Clippers, pre the two superstars, Doc really started him and Zubac kind of based on the matchups. Like, if they match up better with Zubac starting, we'll start him. If we match up better with Montrez, we'll start him. And, like, I really like that vibe. But the two things with them is that they really can't guard a true big. Like, and this was another thing that really hurt us in the playoffs, like, especially facing, like, Kristaps and even Boban, and then in the second round facing Jokic, that, like, these true bigs that you're going to see in the playoffs, like, as much as the league's going to small ball now, a true big is still extremely valuable. And, like, when you have to face, like, in any sort of playoff series, there's a chance that you go through Jokic, Gobert, and even
Anthony Davis.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's 3 or 4 true bigs that we have no answer to, and that was even from the beginning of the year. Like, I remember you and me, Ethan, were talking about, like, this Clipper-Laker thing, and it was like, how do they match up? And it's like, oh my gosh, like, Anthony Davis has to guard Paul George. But then we go on the flip side and we're like, wait a second, Montrez or Paul George has to guard Anthony Davis. And it was this weird thing where it was a weird matchup-wise. But I think that was what really hurt us this past year, is that we'd face these true big men in the playoffs, and we had no answer for them at all.
Yeah, it was definitely apparent in the playoffs that Montrez especially could not hang. I mean, he was like in the Mavericks series especially, he was played off the floor by Boban. Like, literally, his minutes in the series were considerably lower than normal, because whenever Doc put Montrez in, Carlisle would put Boban in, and Boban would outplay him.
He'd have random spurts of like 10 points in 4 minutes that they just throw it down to Boban, and he just turns around and he jump hooks him to death. So as Shaq would say, right?
Yes. All right. So, but that's last year's Clippers. Let's talk this year's Clippers. They have made some interesting moves this offseason. They re-signed Marcus Morris to a decent contract. It was 4 years, $64 million, I believe. They get Serge Ibaka for about 9.2 a year. Serge Ibaka is a big piece on your team. I mean, he's a guy that can guard these bigs, not necessarily exclusively, but stretch five, really adds a lot of character to a team. Great locker room guy, knows Kawhi well, is good friends with Kawhi. I mean, and still produces at 15 and a half, 8, and a little over assists, or a little under assists and a half a game. So still a productive player. And with those two additions, I don't know if your team got better, but it definitely didn't get a whole lot worse.
Yeah, I think it's not it's obviously not a rebuilding, it's like a retooling to where, we lose a guy like Montrez, a 6th man of the year, but we're still good. We still have another 6th man of the year in Lou Will. So we're good on that. But I was kind of mentioning even to you guys, even before we started the podcast tonight, that, like, the Clippers added a lot more versatility. Not that we weren't versatile before. Like, last year's team wasn't versatile, but I feel like really, I guess, new coach Ty Lue could go as really big or as small as he wants. With the roster we have now, of course, if we make another move, maybe we get somebody like Hassan Whiteside if we have the cap, or if Ballmer's just like, we'll get anybody. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to him. He's building a new stadium right next to the Rams. So it would be... I do like the versatility a lot. Especially, I do really like the Luke Kennard move, getting him and bringing him in. I think he adds a lot of playmaking to this team where the offense gets a little stagnant, which you had mentioned against the Mavs happened a little bit and certainly happened throughout the course of the year, that when it gets stagnant, that maybe Luke Kennard could be some sort of playmaker that gets open looks for whoever. But honestly, like you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, like they're going to get a lot of open looks for other people too. So I like the versatility they have in their lineups to go as big or as small as they like, but also the guys they have really can bring about, I think, just more movement and kind of less staticky of offense, if that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, so the big moves that you guys have made, is you already kind of touched on it, is Ibaka and Luke Kennard. Those are your two new dudes coming into this Clippers team.
Mm-hmm.
I would make the argument that you pretty much flipped Montrez for Ibaka. And I think, not on purpose, but that is kind of how it turned out.
Pretty much.
Ibaka is...
Same thing like Shamet for
Yes,
Kennard, right?
and Shamet for Kennard. And I would say that both of those are considerable upgrades in both talent, versatility, and, character. Those are guys that, Ibaka and Kennard are both known to be really good locker guys. Ibaka actually can guard 7-footers because he is a 7-footer and he's a great shot blocker. And he's just kind of a good team defensive guy. Montrez never was. And then Kennard comes in that same kind of role that Shamet did. But Shamet was almost exclusively a catch-and-shoot guy where, like you said, Kennard is actually going to be able to take it off the bounce and make plays for other people. I would argue that you guys are still the number 2 team in the West. I don't know if you're going to have the second seed just because you're always doing the
load management thing,
which is going to be a big deal this year with this shortened 72 compact game season. That's going to be a little bit more compacted. The load management is going to be more of a thing. So my guess, you probably end up with a 3rd or 4th seed just because you end up benching Kawhi and Paul George. But overall, I still would be very, very afraid of the Clippers. And I think you have just as much a chance this year to beat the Lakers as you did last year, mainly because of Ibaka going up against Anthony Davis than having Trez or Zubac go up against Anthony Davis.
Man, I'd like to think so. I had a really stressful, going back to the Shamet kind of for Luke Kennard, trade as it were. There was a very brief period where I was extremely upset. And it was because it was just we got rid of a really significant role player for just the 19th pick, which is, I guess, is a good asset, of course. A middle first round pick is a good asset. But then there was about 20 minutes of just very extreme confusion. And then the completed trade where basically we get Luke Kennard and then the Pistons get that pick. And it was just kind of like this big sigh of relief of I just got to trust Jerry West. He arguably might be one of the best executives ever.
Yeah.
He was the one that constructed the Warriors that, broke the wins record and, went to 3 straight final. The guy knows how to build a team.
And the Kobe Shaq Lakers. He was the GM of that team as well.
Yeah. So I had, about 20 minutes of all right, I guess I got to trust Jerry. And then it was all right, I get it now. I get it. Which, but it was just kind of Shamet for Luke Kennard, a player on the Pistons, and it's I don't know, this guy's a baller. He's good, and I'm really excited to see what he brings to this Clipper team, and as well as Serge Ibaka. We haven't really had, he's kind of our first really our first scoring center as it were, maybe since Prime Blake, a scoring big, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you could argue that Blake wasn't really a center either. I mean, he might be your best
he might be our best scoring big maybe since Elton Brand.
I was gonna say Elton Brand or Chris Kaman back in the day. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Chris Kaman! I gotta give him a little shout out. If he ever listens to this, I'm a big fan of his. And if I were to put my life on a basketball shot outside of a layup or dunk, it's a Chris Kaman baseline J. Like a 10, 12 footer. You put the free throw 90 degrees to the right or left. That baseline J from Chris Kaman is money.
Dude, I love Chris Kaman. Yeah. He had a short stint with the Blazers.
He's one of my favorite. It's weird because some of my favorite Clippers over the years haven't been the stars. I really liked Kaman. I really liked Randy Foye. He was just such a knockdown shooter. Randy Foye was awesome. I was really upset when we got rid of Randy Foye.
I feel that's got to be that's a classic Clippers mentality. If you're going to choose to be a Clippers fan over a Lakers, then you're going to be a fan of all the weird role players as opposed to the actual stars.
Even Ryan Gomes wasn't too bad back in the day. He could hit it. He could knock it down. But it was oh my gosh, Randy Foye was one of my guys. And then but of the of the superstar Clippers, the Lob City Clips, I like DeAndre a lot. But Jamal Crawford, he has a soft spot too in my heart. He was pretty awesome.
All right,
of the throwbacks, but
so I just your guys' tangent here gave me a chance to look it up. Landry Shamet stats versus Luke Kennard stats. Landry Shamet averaged 9 points, 1.9 rebounds, and 1.9 assists last year. Luke Kennard averaged 15.8 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 4.1 assists. As a team where you don't have a true guy who can really go out and get a lot of assists, I mean, your leader looks like Lou Will at a little over 5.5.
Sounds about right.
And then maybe it was, it looks like Kawhi
Maybe
at
Kawhi,
5.
probably, right?
So you need a guy who can go out there and get you some assists. And Luke Kennard's young. He has a lot of learning to do. And given this, like, if you give him, not necessarily the keys, but you give him the opportunity of like, hey, you can really go and create for these guys. He could bump that 4.1 up to 6.1 and really be a good creator for your team.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if he starts. Did he start on the Pistons? He started on the Pistons last year, right? He's the starting shooting guard for Detroit last year.
90% of the
and
offense
arguably
on
him
the
and
Pistons.
Blake were and D Rose were probably their offense last year. So yeah, I'm certainly excited. I don't know what role he's obviously going to have a major role in this team. I don't know if that's a starting two guard, or maybe even in some lineups a 1, or off the bench after, I would assume, Lou Will. Lou Will's still the sixth man of this team. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Lou will always be the sixth man.
He's the sixth man of any team that has him.
Yeah, he doesn't. He even straight from the horse's mouth. He doesn't start games. He finishes them.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just what he does. But okay, so let's take a break here. Let's get back into this Sculpin. I need to grab another one.
I do as well.
So, I mean, I'm enjoying it. The more I drink, the more of the grapefruit I get of it, like from it. I really like it. Again, not a big IPA guy, but it's tasty.
I'm glad you're going for a second. I'm really proud of you.
I mean, I've had this one before. I like this one.
It's really solid. Them and I was trying to think of more San Diego breweries, but another big one is Stone. Stone IPAs are a big, kind of more mainstream, like Ballast Point is. They're too big in San Diego. Another big one, I'm trying to think, not as mainstream, but there's another really good one. Oh man, I'm pretty sure Swami is one. I don't know if you're super into the IPA scene, but I'm pretty sure Swami is a San Diego brewery
San Diego
as well.
is south.
It's very south. It's about as south as it gets. Swami is another really good one. I would have to look more on the San Diego brewery scene, but there are so many down there, like North San Diego, like Del Mar, La Jolla. They have some really good breweries there. Obviously, like downtown San Diego. That's all throughout. You got good beers all over the place there.
Yeah, it's kind of popping.
But
down
Sculpin
there.
holds its own, even against like some of these, even like more like big dog breweries that like some of them where out of 5 stars, all their beers average 4.2, 4.3 out of 5. Where even like Sculpin, it holds its own. So it's for a mainstream like big IPA beer, like it's really good.
Yeah.
It's always a staple.
I like it quite a lot. I'm not a fan of grapefruit. Like in most
I'm not
things
either.
in general.
I never eat. No.
But you get the sourness that like comes out of the grapefruit, but it's not like the overwhelming like really like citric acidy grapefruit flavor that you get. It's actually pretty smooth for an IPA. Like I don't know what the IBUs is, but it doesn't taste like crazy hoppy like a lot of like IPAs do.
Yeah, since it's probably a single IPA, so it's probably not too insane. It's 7.0.
Okay. Oh yeah, nice and low.
So it's maybe not quite yet for a double, but yeah, really good stuff. And it's about as San Diego of a beer as it gets. Like, we're drinking this inside, in indoors, but like this is a great one where like if you're at the beach and you have a little cooler with your friends, like, ideally my dad is like a crazy beer snob, like to the point where it's like kind of sickening. But, his whole thing is like, I'll drink, a Sculpin or a Watermelon Dorado is another really good one. If you find it in SoCal. You may not find it out here in the DFW area, but he always is like, I'll drink one of these if I'm outside and it's 80 degrees or warmer, I will drink this. And
Wow,
it's like,
that is a beer snob.
And it's like, oh, my dad. It
is currently like probably in the
I love my
low
dad.
50s,
he's
high
great.
40s right now.
Yeah, but that's just my dad's thing, which I'll drink this forever. But he's much more snob than I am. But Grapefruit Sculpin is very solid, and
Yeah,
You know, if you're outside and it's above 80 degrees, it is a perfect beer. So it's a really solid IPA.
It is pretty impressive that a beer from San Diego Brewing Company that's like not necessarily a small company, but like not one of the big ones, finds its way all the way to DFW. Like the fact that we literally went into a local liquor store and picked these up shows like how good it is and how like far its reach is.
Shout out to there. There's another place out in Clear Fork, City Works. You guys have probably been there. They have Sculpin on draft like all the time, and so like if I'm there, like watching NFL or something on Sunday mornings, they have like 80 beers on tap, and I'm just like, that one's Oh, they got Sculpin, cool.
Yeah. Always go with the Sculpin.
It's always my go-to. So it's a really solid one, and like I said, it holds its own amongst some of the big boy beers.
I kind of love that we got the San Diego beer going with the Clippers, who used to be the San Diego basketball team.
You could make, there's a lot of, the Clippers are very easy to do little subtle jabs at. Yeah. They're the perfect team for that. So, some of these listeners might be the whole, they might go back to San Diego because of that. Because we chose this beer.
Say that.
So go back to San Diego. That might be the kiss of death for my fandom.
If they went to San Diego?
Yeah, I'm not a San Diego. I'm an LA guy. So it's like if they're not in LA, I don't know. We'll see.
Fair enough.
We'll see.
So we've talked about last year's team. This team going forward, expectations, are there any?
Sure hope so.
Like, yes, there are. I mean, they're not a bad team. Like,
Go for it,
you
sorry.
expect some things from them, but like, what's their ceiling? What's their floor? Brandon, in your opinion, what's a successful season? What's a non-successful season? Are there more moves to be made here? Where are we at?
So I'm hoping, let's see, I'm liking where our roster is at now. I still think we need another big in one way or another, like a true like rim protecting big, because Ibaka can do that, but I feel like he's more on the scoring side of things. He's definitely an all-around player, but I feel like Ibaka's more of a scoring big, where I feel like we really are lacking the rim protection of like a Lob City DeAndre Jordan or somebody like that. So I think we're still a piece away in that matter. We're obviously still, I would like, big title contenders of where we're at now. So I'd like to think we're a top 3 seed in the West. And if we don't, I'm pretty realistic, and I still think other teams are better than we are. So I don't want to pop off and say like, champs or bust, but like, when you have the roster you have, you at least got to push for that, obviously. And if we don't even get out of the second round, like last year was a failure. Like, the Clippers up until the last 10 years, it's like, yeah, second round's pretty good. But with the rosters that we've put together, that's still not good enough.
Yeah.
For especially all the talent that we've had.
Yeah, I appreciate your humbleness about it, but this team is championship or bust. Like that's just the reality of the situation. That's what it was last year, and that's what it's going to be this year. And even if you don't feel like you're as good as the Lakers or the Bucks or the Nets or something like that, this team is built to win a championship, especially this year, being that Kawhi and Paul George are coming up on player options, right?
Yep. Yeah. If it's not after this year, it gets really dicey. And I really like the moves that they've made so far, because, if you have a team with all these great players, it's like, oh, just run it back, do it again, run it back. Like we were thinking maybe Milwaukee was going to do that pre-Drew Holiday. It's like, yeah, run it back. But I really like the retooling that we did. It looks like we really addressed kind of some things that we needed in maybe some more playmaking, maybe some more size. And so I like where we stand, and yeah, it's definitely nice to have expectations and be like, we got to get it done, and it just adds more pressure to this roster, and we'll kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, it's definitely scary knowing that Kawhi and Paul George are up. I mean, that is like almost 50 points a game that might leave after this year if you don't do well. 50 points a game, 12 rebounds, and like 8 assists coming out of your scoring and production if they choose to leave. And so, and with the amount of picks that you gave up to get these guys, Paul George being, I think it was 5 first-round picks.
It was 3 of the Clippers and then 2 swaps. I think one if not both were from the Heat, but nonetheless 5 picks technically. 3 were truly ours, but yes,
5 picks to be
Doesn't excuse.
And Kawhi wouldn't come if you didn't get Paul George. So you get basically give up 5 picks for both of them. But if they walk and you don't have a championship and you don't really have a lot of young assets on this team, this is a scary future if they do decide to leave.
Yeah. I will say that like the one thing that you could still use is another defensive minded big man. I like Ibaka a lot, but I think you still have a little bit more to be desired. Seeing that the big man is kind of coming back a little bit. The Lakers are making it popular again to have a bunch of big men and like rim protectors and rollers and cutters and stuff like that.
I just trust, I just am hoping and praying that Steve Ballmer is just like, we'll go over. Like, I own Microsoft. Like, I'll just pay the luxury tax. Like, that's no biggie to him. He just wants to win. So it's like, at this point, it's like, just kind of screw everything and just go for it. Like, so when are the Clippers? If the Clippers don't win one this next year, they may not win one for another, maybe, geez. Why? I'd like to think in the next 10 years, but I'm thinking maybe double that.
But as of right now, I just looked it up.
If ever.
The Clippers currently, their payroll right now is $110 million, and that is before they paid Marcus Morris and Serge Ibaka. And the cap space is supposed to be 109, so you're already over. I mean, Paul George and Kawhi collectively make about $70 million between the two of them. So that gives you about another $40 million to fill out the rest of your roster. You end up signing Marcus Morris for 14. Beverly makes 13. Lou Will makes 8. Zubac makes 7. You sign Serge Ibaka to 10. Like, money goes away quickly. So you don't have a ton of caps. You're bringing in on minimum guys.
Yeah, and it would have been nice. I would have really liked Boogie Cousins on. I would have liked the minimum, but I'm assuming he got maybe more than that with Houston.
He got the minimum. Took the minimum.
Well, all right. Well, we probably tried. At least I'm gonna hope that we tried for Boogie Cousins. But yeah, a rim protecting big on a minimum would be like ideal. Maybe a little high. Maybe a little more than Joakim Noah. I love Joakim Noah, but if he's out there, I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, because you look at the rest.
Who else is out there of big men?
And you look at the rest of your roster. Your other bigs are Marcus Morris, Serge Ibaka, Patrick Patterson, and then you have Zubac, Kabengele, and Joakim Noah to kind of round out your big rotation.
Yeah.
Other than Serge Ibaka, there's not really any great post defenders. I mean, you could say Joakim Noah, but that's circa 8 years ago.
Yeah. And that's where it comes back to the whole like these other big teams like the Lakers have AD, like the Nuggets have Jokic, like these really big teams have like in the West, I guess, or I guess in the league, in the whole league, like these really big men that you're going to face in the playoffs. Like you got to have an answer for them if you really want to contend and like try and beat these guys. Like,
yeah, I mean, you could literally go down the list on the West Coast where you have Anthony Davis and Marc Gasol, and then you have Jokic, and then you have Gobert, and then you have Nurkic, and then you have Kristaps Porzingis.
Yep.
And you have,
even throw in Ayton.
Yeah.
Even DeAndre Ayton with the up-and-coming Suns, possibly.
Yeah. Like, so you have to have a good defensive big man. You now have that, I think, in Ibaka. He's going to be a huge step up, but I still don't know if it's enough. You're still lacking in the two things you were really lacking in last year, which is the rim protection and the playmaking. And Kennard and Ibaka are upgrades, but is it enough for the championship is the real question.
And we will find out if they have enough. We will see. I want to get last-minute gut reactions. Where do the Clippers end up? Do they win it all? What round are they out in? Where do they end up?
Man, I don't think we get it done this year. With the roster we have now, I don't think we get it done this year.
Upsetting from the Clipper fan. Mitch?
I would say you make it to the conference finals. And you probably...
We make it to the conference finals?
You are going to make it to the
conference...
Yes.
Conference finals? Yes. Yes. Wait, did we make it in 15 against Houston? Wait.
No.
Did we make it last year against Denver? Wait.
So that would still be a big stepping stone for the Clippers. Like, that is a monumental thing to get to the Western Conference Finals in the first place. That's where I end up. That's where I think you guys end up.
Yeah, but the ultimate, we'll see, because we all know the clip's gonna clip.
We will see, ladies and gentlemen. That is another episode of the Team Morale Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. For Brandon, Mitch, we're signing off. Ballast Point Grapefruit Sculpin tonight. It was a good one. And as Brandon always says, the clip's gonna clip. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.